The pain of silence weighs differently on the souls that endure it. The truth is that many of us have experienced moments when the expected response becomes a trap, a well-crafted snare. We hide our vulnerabilities behind forced smiles and carefully chosen words, yet vulnerability always tries to escape. When attacked, we instinctively seek to defend ourselves. Here lies the paradox. In defending ourselves, we hand over control and reveal our weaknesses. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step. Have you ever felt powerless when confronted? The impulse to justify yourself is strong, almost involuntary. However, this need for explanation isn't always a display of strength. It often indicates a surrender to despair. With every word spoken, the perception of the other transforms. The true masters of the narrative are those who keep their mouths shut. The strategy of silence is a subtle but powerful tool. While your attacker anticipates a response, you remain unshaken. Silence then becomes a shield. In this space of quiet, doubt begins to flourish. What is the other person really thinking? Will they try to destabilize you through argument? By not rushing to respond, you turn pressure into diversion, feeding your opponent's emotional tension without saying a word. Accepting that true power lies in the absence of a need to defend yourself opens up a new horizon. This new posture can be unsettling. For many, a lack of response is the greatest provocation for reflection. It's where the cycle of fragility ends and the dance of perception begins, where the oppressor starts to fear you. Remember, the absence of response is a powerful form of presence. The power of an attack lies not just in the aggression itself, but in the response it provokes. I feel the weight of this in every interaction, the pressure that arises when we are confronted. The instinct is defensive. Words crowd in your throat, eager to be spoken. But here's the trick that few recognize. When you defend yourself, you hand over your control. Each explanation, each excuse, each justification becomes an open window to your weaknesses. This is the trap. The desire to justify yourself turns into a treacherous terrain. When you step into the arena of debate, you reveal your vulnerability, and vulnerability is never an invitation to respect. In the dance of power, those who expose themselves to the judgment of others are inevitably giving away the cards. The conversation transforms into a weapon in the wrong hands. Following conventional logic is a common mistake. Accepting the provocation of an attack as something that deserves a response is to fall into a game where the oppressor always holds the advantage. True mastery is found in the art of silence. Becoming an unshakable presence amidst the storm destabilizes your opponent. While you observe, they become prey to their own insecurities. Silence raises questions that can drive them crazy. Why aren't they responding? What are they really thinking? By strategically withdrawing from verbalization, you empower yourself. Instead of reacting, you simply observe. The absence of response is paradoxically a powerful and deliberate form of resilience. You don't need everyone to understand your silence. It only needs to resonate like an insidious shadow in their minds. Without words, you become a mystery that commands respect. You are not hard to love, but you are undeniably difficult to deceive. Silence is more than just the absence of sound. It is a powerful presence, a battleground where your opponent's mind can become unsteady. When confronted, the first impulse is usually to defend ourselves. Amidst rushed words and justifications, we reveal more than we intend. In this arena, vulnerability is an open door, and your weaknesses become the target. Every word we attempt to articulate is not a shield, it's a knife that cuts away what little control we have left. The paradox is clear. When we seek to justify ourselves, we not only yield to pressure, but also let insecurity take over. The social pressure urging us to respond is a subtle trap. In this context, the act of speaking becomes a weakness, an exposure that the opponent can use against us. Instead of conveying strength, verbal defenses often reveal the fragility of our position. Now think about this. Each time you choose not to respond, you are not just resisting provocation. You become an enigma to your attacker. While many expect an answer, your calmness and absence of reaction create a space of uncertainty. It is in silence that doubts begin to germinate. The aggressor then finds themselves gripped by an anxiety that can, paradoxically, turn against them. Silence becomes a tool of emotional disruption, destabilizing those who seek control. By embracing the power of silence, you are not just invisible. You are a force that challenges expectations. There's no need to expose what you think. True power does not seek approval. It maintains an air of mystery. That is true mastery. When words cease, the mind becomes an open field of possibilities. The power of perception is a silent weapon, a thin line between control and submission. The moment an attack is launched, we step into the arena, ready to defend ourselves. But what many don't realize is that by exposing ourselves and justifying our actions, we not only give away our words, but also our vulnerabilities. This dynamic turns reactions into traps. The very words meant to protect us become knives, cutting through the veil of security. We've all experienced this. A hostile glance, a malicious comment. The impulse to justify ourselves feels almost compulsive. But it is at that very moment that the art of silence reveals itself. By stepping back and saying nothing, you transform the attack into uncertainty. Silence in its rawness becomes a shield. In the void of words, new questions arise. What are they really thinking? This uncertainty becomes fertile ground for doubt, a field where the aggressor's insecurities begin to sprout. True strength is not about being heard, but about allowing the actions of others to shape the narrative. Silence destabilizes. It creates an emotional disturbance, a pressure that can consume the attacker. While they wait for a response, you remain unyielding. Living amidst this constant tension shifts the focus. Instead of fighting for a defense, you choose to observe. Control reveals itself not in the words spoken, but in the strength of your silent presence. When expectations are frustrated, doubt reigns. The attack becomes a burden for the one who perpetrates it. Power does not need to be proclaimed. Sometimes true presence is simply the resounding absence of words. The absence of response is often the most powerful response. Silence has the power to transform the room. In moments of confrontation, when words fly like arrows, the true weapon lies in the absence of sound. We notice this in our daily interactions. The pressure to respond, to justify ourselves, and that pressure, at its core, is the trap. When you speak, you surrender not just your defense, but control of the narrative. The instinct is to protect oneself. However, every botched excuse exposes not only your fragilities, but also the vulnerabilities of those who attack. Picture the room. An attacker waits for your response, eager to strike. Any attempt at justification only serves to bolster the power of the one pressing you. Your words act like the opening of a window that reveals not just your insecurities, but your intentions as well. Silence, on the other hand, is an enigma. It's a space where anxiety and doubt begin to flourish. What are they really thinking? Why aren't they responding? These questions become fertile ground for your opponent's insecurity, while you remain enveloped in an aura of calm. Being emotionally unshakable amid this is the true challenge. It's easy to get pulled into the need to justify yourself, but what few recognize is that this need is a well-designed trap. By choosing not to engage, the one who remains silent not only deflects the attention from the attack, but also positions themselves as a dominant force in the perception of what's happening. True mastery lies in the ability to remain obscure, like a shadow that unfolds challenges and cultivates respect silently. You can't explain what is strong, it stands out in the absence of words. In the psychological game, mastering the narrative is a critical weapon, a force that can redefine perceptions and reverse positions. When we are attacked, we often find ourselves compelled to justify our actions, to explain what motivates us, to fight for our truth. However, this compulsion can turn into a deadly trap. Each explanation, each verbal defense, is not just a surrender of control, it's an invitation to vulnerability. The attacker waits and you respond. In this dance, the cards are in their hands. True power lies in the ability to manipulate the narrative itself, to change how others perceive us. When you choose silence, you create an atmosphere of uncertainty, a space where doubt can settle in. You don't just become a passive subject, you transform into a mystery. Silence generates more questions than answers. What does he really mean? Why isn't he reacting? Here, your absence becomes an unsettling presence, challenging, and thought-provoking. Taking control of the narrative requires courage. It's essential to resist the temptation to expose yourself to criticism, to give in to the need for immediate approval. Silence is a form of strength. While you remain quiet, the other person gradually becomes destabilized. Insecurities start to surface, and the pressure turns back on those who try to impose a narrative. You're not just observing, you're manipulating. It's not about being heard, but about being recognized through your inclination toward calmness and opacity. A man who doesn't need to justify himself is not just strong, he is respected. In the space between words, true control emerges. Silence is not an absence. It is a dominant presence that shapes the narrative itself. Sometimes the absence of words is your sharpest defense. True strength emerges in invisibility. Power lies in remaining in the shadows, where the voices speaking are often immersed in their own fears and insecurities. Have you ever felt the pressure of an attack? The need to explain yourself to defend your actions? This compulsion reveals not just your vulnerability, but also that of your attackers. Each justification is an open door that exposes your weaknesses, promising a respect that never comes. And the trap is set. Silence, in its essence, is unsettling. While you shield yourself behind it, your choices become a dance of control. The oppressor, eager for a reaction, encounters a challenging absence. With each moment of expectation, doubt is fed. Why isn't he responding? What is he really thinking? In this game, keeping your mouth shut is a powerful strategy, not a weakness. You turn pressure into a diversion that accentuates uncertainty. This is where the psychology of silence transforms the interaction. Well-utilized silence is not passivity, it's a display of self-control. By deflecting the need to respond, you refuse to be the protagonist in a narrative that doesn't favor you. Instead of reacting, observe. Every unspoken word becomes a tool that shapes the narrative, a challenge that reconfigures the expectations of the attacker. What many don't understand is that the absence of words can be the most devastating presence. When an attack is launched and you resist the temptation to defend yourself, you don't just affirm your position, you become an enigma. The absence of response is often the most powerful response. The act of remaining silent in the face of an attack is an exercise in control that few truly master. There is no precision in words when the pressure rises. There's a raw, visceral dynamic at play the moment we are confronted, an almost instinctive desire to justify our very presence. However, this urgent need for defense is the best-laid trap. Failing to resist this impulse reveals more than intentions, it exposes you. Each explanation offered is not a shield but a display of vulnerability. How do we navigate this trap? The first step is awareness. Silence is not a weakness, it's a choice. If you don't expose yourself immediately, you create a shield. The opponent finds themselves in a field full of uncertainty. The expectations generated by your initial reaction become a source of pressure. A strategic absence provokes questions. Why isn't he reacting? What does he really think? It's in this space that you redefine the game. Staying silent is not just about avoiding confrontation, it's a subtle transformation of the interaction. In this state of verbal inaction, you become a mystery, a silent force that destabilizes. Silence generates an echo in the minds of others, an internal confrontation that disrupts the attacker. While they await your move, you take on a surprisingly dominant role, like a spectator observing the dance of the other's insecurity. It's the absence that speaks. By withholding your words, you turn doubt into a powerful ally. It's not necessary to be understood. It's important to be feared. True strength lies in refusing to engage in the game, making silence your armor and doubt your weapon. In the absence of words, presence becomes an unbeatable force. Silence is more than just the absence of sound. It's a formidable presence that can shape the course of any interaction. In a world filled with noise and distractions, finding strength in silence becomes an act of courage. The real skill lies in knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when to remain silent. It's not merely about avoiding conflict. It's about understanding that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. This power, often underestimated, is a tool that transforms dynamics in relationships. When you choose to stay quiet, you create an atmosphere of uncertainty, a space where doubt can take root. You become more than just a passive participant. You turn into a mystery. Silence invites questions. What does he really mean? Why isn't he reacting? In these moments, your absence becomes a compelling presence that challenges and intrigues. True mastery in this area requires courage. It's necessary to resist the urge to expose yourself to criticism and to surrender to the immediate need for approval. Remember, silence is a form of strength. As long as you don't speak, the other person gradually becomes destabilized. Insecurities start to surface, and the pressure shifts back to those who attempt to impose their narrative. The powerful presence of silence demonstrates that you do not need to justify yourself. The person who can remain silent is not only strong, but also commands respect. In the space between words, true control emerges. Silence is not a void. It is a dominant presence that shapes the narrative itself. Sometimes the absence of words is your sharpest defense. True strength is often hidden in the nuances of silence. In the absence of words lies a strategy that is frequently overlooked. The impulse to justify oneself, to seek validation in the face of an attack, is a trap that many fall into. Each verbal justification doesn't act as a shield, rather it exposes a weakness. You yield to your opponent, allowing their insecurities to take center stage in the narrative. Silence, at its core, transforms into the purest form of resistance. It permeates the environment, creating an unease that shakes the confidence of the attacker. By refusing to respond, you are not just a passive participant in this game, you become the true agent of change. In this space of quiet, doubt begins to sprout. What are they really thinking? Why aren't they responding? Silence becomes fertile ground for the opponent's insecurity. The art of remaining silent amidst accusation is no easy feat. It requires a level of self-control that few can master. It demands an understanding that power does not lie in being heard, but in silencing the voices that attempt to shape your perception. Remember, the person who does not need to justify themselves commands respect. Your silence destabilizes. When you choose this strategy, do not seek approval or understanding. Keep yourself mysterious. True power reveals itself in your willingness to be an unsettling presence in the midst of chaos. The absence of response is often the most powerful response of all.